The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
BUMBLEFOOT. BUMBLEFOOT.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Tickets, please take your seat on the left. There will be entrance. Prepare for pickup. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's great to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, November 16th. Friday, November 17th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, Hope you had a great day and night as we are live right here, the Great White North, on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, as we are here for your listening needs 7 days a week. We say hello to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network. Now, if you want to listen in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Get your horns up for Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official music of SOR. Also, you can check us out all over Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. We're going to be tagging that on the front of our website because there's a few people who are having troubles finding it right now, but we're going to get it there. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live, tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows from iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. And remember, you can also go over to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month. You can become a patron of SOR. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you need to do me a favor. You need to sign into one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club, or on Spreaker. You can also join us on Twitter at hashtag SpacedOutRadio, where we got great conversation going there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Pick yourself up a t-shirt, posters, stickers. Read the Encounter online. We got brand new news stories going on there every day. You can check out my latest blog as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. We got great videos as well from Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. We don't do a lot of serious topics on here. I mean, we do, but usually topics that aren't happening in everyday life in front of the mainstream. The mass shootings continue, and the conspiracy theorists continue to call these false flags. It's a situation that has been getting out of hand on both ends, from the Las Vegas shooting to a church in Texas, and now a school in California. That demented and the deranged keep the impromptu bloodbaths going is sickening. In the meantime, conspiracy theorists all over the internet are screaming, "False flag! No one died!" And many who are trying to get the stories behind the stories out there are simply sitting back, analyzing the situation and saying, "Really? Are we that blind?" Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News is back for his monthly feature on Spaced Out Radio, The Rebel Planet. He lived and had friends shot in Vegas by Stephen Paddock. Jamie now lives close to the shooting that happened just outside of San Antonio, Texas. Tonight, we get into a serious topic because the only thing we do know is right now, thoughts and prayers are no longer working too well. Jamie Sexton, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. How was your evening, my friend?
It was very eventful. Very eventful. And, just getting started with you, so...
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad you are here to join us right on time, as per usual. You know, you're all stretched out and ready to go.
I'm limber. Yep.
Excellent, excellent, my friend. Now, you have had, I'm going to say, some really strange luck because you just leave Las Vegas a month and a half, 2 months previous to this horrific shooting that we talked about last month on the show. And now you're in San Antonio, Texas, building the Rebel Planet, and just down the road 30 minutes, this other horrific shooting happens. And now, just this week, the one in California where the deranged, estranged husband kills his wife the night before, then goes on a shooting rampage trying to get into schools. You know, honestly, my friend, there are so many mass shootings going on. What the hell is happening down there?
I don't know, man. It does seem like there's an escalation in the mass shootings, at least in a small cluster right now. I don't know. I think it may be too early to tell if this is a national epidemic or something of that nature. I hope it's not. I hope it's just coincidence and irony at this point, and that we don't hear about any more of these things. But yeah, it's not a good thing. It's terrible.
It is terrible, and I'm not getting into the gun debate tonight because that's not what it's about.
No.
The problem that I'm having is, I don't know about you, but I know for myself and many others on social media, I'm getting sick of the thoughts and prayers speech. They're obviously not working.
Well, believers want to extend that to the people that, are in crisis. So I wouldn't take that away from them. But I don't think as a culture and society that's enough. I think we need to do more. But yeah, I hear what you say. I think maybe your implication was some of it maybe a little hollow.
Yeah, it's shallow, it's hollow, because, I don't know what it's like down there. I've never lived in the United States. I love your country. You and I are very, very good friends. I have plenty of friends and family in the United States. I'm a huge fan of America.
Right.
Even though I live right upstairs in Canada. And I guess for me, I look at it, when Canada has a problem, we do something about it, or we try and find solutions, rather than thoughts and prayers. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not getting into the whole gun debate tonight, because last month you and I got into it a little bit, and now we're number 3, and we both agreed that we love each other as good friends, but we're going to agree to disagree on that topic. But the whole point is, at what point do people take a step back and say, how do we cure this? How do we cure this problem? There's almost a mass shooting every day in the United States. A mass shooting is 3 or more people.
Yeah. I think that really my feeling on this has always been that we need to start connecting more as a society and as individuals and as communities, neighbors. I mean, when I grew up as a boy, I remember I knew who all of my neighbors were. I knew my next door neighbor on either side, 2 houses down from that, everybody across the street. I knew almost everybody on my block. I would play with their kids, or I would, go over to their house for cookies. Everybody knew everybody. And you don't see that anymore. And it seems like we live in a lot closer proximity. We practically live on top of each other. If we don't live in apartment complexes or townhomes or duplexes, even single family homes are less than 15 feet apart from each other now in most communities. But you don't know who your neighbors are. You don't know how many people live there, what their background is. A lot of times you don't even know their names, their first names. So I think there's a big social disconnect, not only with your neighbors and your community and your city, but sometimes even within your own home. Everybody's got their face these days buried into social media and their cell phones, and everybody's just so busy that they're not connecting. And I think we miss a lot of things that slip through the cracks. A lot of, maybe warning signs, maybe people that need help, some mental help, or some, I just think that we're so disconnected as a society. And the tragedy of that is that when something happens like this, we all go, oh my God, how'd that happen? How'd that happen? And then, the news will do an interview with the neighbors, and they're like, all the neighbors in every story, they're always like, man, I wouldn't have thought it. That guy lived right next to me. I just wouldn't have thought that. It's like, yeah, well, you probably didn't know him. You probably didn't know anything about him. People don't take the time to get to. I remember the shooter in Las Vegas. They interviewed his brother, And his brother said, I didn't know he had any weapons. I didn't know anything about weapons. You know, it's just, I don't know, man. We just seem really disconnected. And when you say, you know, that we need to do something about it, I think it starts there. I think it starts with connecting with each other and you know, maybe curbing some of this stuff, or at least identifying it before it escalates into something like this.
You know, you're so right. I remember growing up in a subdivision where everybody knew everybody. Everybody had kids. There was, you know, we lived in a cul-de-sac that at the end of the cul-de-sac was a park, and every summer we were doing barbecues, and all the kids were outside until dark playing hide-and-go-seek or baseball or football, whatever it may be. In the winter, we froze the tennis court that was in the area in the park so we could skate on it and play a little ice hockey. I mean, that's what community does. Do you think it's because of the lack of community and the individualism that we have all seemed to take over that we are not learning what people are like anymore? Is maybe the social media life, is this what we should expect now?
Well, I think that that's one contributing factor. I think there are many contributing factors, to be honest with you. I think it's sort of a convergence of problems. Another one is just the I think that people are unduly influenced by the outside world. And when I talked about disconnect earlier, I mentioned the family. I think that's another thing. I think that parents aren't connecting with their children or guardians, whoever it may be. Some people are raised by their aunt and uncle, grandparents, whoever. But, you know, they're just sort of letting kids grow up by the seat of their pants without any real supervision. And I think, at least in our culture, the PC environment, I think that parents are afraid to actually parent anymore. They don't even know the rules. They don't know how to be parents. And they just sort of let the television and the internet and their cell phone and their computers raise their children now. And that's probably a dangerous thing to do. There's a lot of information out there to indoctrinate young minds in the wrong way if you're not careful. I just think there's a whole lot of neglect in our society.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that absolutely sickens me about it, from an outsider's perspective, is that kids in elementary school now have to learn what to do if a shooter enters the school. I think that is one of the most... I realize it has to be done now, okay? I do get that. Safety first, okay? But if you're going to have...
You're just upset that we're at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Kids as young as 5 years old, 6 years old, even up until high school, should not have to worry about getting killed at school because of some idiot who decides to snap. You know what I'm saying? And it is sad that kids today have to learn safety like that.
Right. I agree. Well, again, when I was young, my brother and I used to ride our bicycles around the neighborhood. My mother always asked, where are you guys going? When will you be back? And, would check up on us. But for the most part, we'd just hop on our bicycle and ride around the block a couple of times, half a mile around the block. There wasn't any big concern about anything that was going to happen to us. Not to say there weren't bad guys in those at that time. There were, but now, I don't have any children. But if I did, I have a nephew. But if I had any children of my own, I would be afraid to let them just hop on their bike and ride around the block in most places. Just because you just never know what's going on.
Absolutely. But, I mean, as a parent, my kids are spread out because we're a blended family. I have an 18-year-old daughter, a 14-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son. Mm-hmm. And, I feel sorry for my kids that they would never have the childhood that we had. Okay? Like at 4 years old, when I was 4 years old in the cul-de-sac that we lived in, all I would say is, Mommy, I'm going next door over to Michael's house or Bobby's house, two of my friends. And I would walk down. Bobby lived at the beginning of the cul-de-sac, which was probably half a mile long, and I would walk over there at 4 years old.
Yeah.
There was no care in the world. There was no idiots pulling up in dark vans, kidnapping you. Yes, it happened, but it was the rarity. There wasn't people trying to, throw drugs down your system or anything. Maybe I lived in small town Canada, but it just didn't happen. And, where do you think all of this lies? Is it the fact that, I'm going to throw this out there, is it the fact that we aren't allowed to discipline children anymore, and therefore we've gone off the deep end in the last 30 years because spanking is out, yelling is out, discipline is out, every kid is being put on some sort of medication early on? What do you think it could be?
Yeah, I think that's you're exactly right in that context. I think that it's I think that part of it is part of a much larger social engineering scheme, but I do believe that aspect of it definitely plays into that we got into the business in the Western culture, not just in the United States, but in the Western culture by and large, even Canada and other countries. We've gotten into the business of over coddling everything, and we're afraid to be sharp. We're afraid to discipline. We're afraid that we might be judged for this or that. And I just think that a lot of that has gone way, way past the point of reasonable. And I think we're seeing some of the effects of that. I think we're seeing a disconnect in the family units. And I think socially, we're seeing a disconnect with people who, once they reach adulthood, they don't really have social skills because they weren't taught social skills. They were coddled. They were, they were either ignored or coddled. There's nothing in between. There's not a whole lot of teaching strength, teaching responsibility. You had mentioned earlier that you were allowed to skate on the frozen tennis court. I'm sure that you probably had your share of skint knees, maybe a broken bone here and there.
Absolutely. Right. There was no bike helmets. I mean, remember building the bike ramp jumps where, you try and build them as high as you could get, and if you wiped out, sure, you may have knocked a tooth out or something like that, but that was part of learning. That was learning.
Exactly. That's my point right there, is that, people are afraid to get dirty these days. I make the argument all the time. It's like, well, man, you're never sick. Why are you never sick? It's like, I don't know, but I played in the dirt most of my life, in the mud. These kids that never get dirty, never get their hands dirty, fingernails are never dirty. They're always sick all the time, I don't know. Maybe I built up some sort of immunity by playing in the dirt. I don't know. But I know one thing, if you're sheltered and coddled and you're not allowed to say this or do this or touch this or go there or do that, and you're not sort of walked through life at a young age and shown, these are the hazards, these are the things, you're either going to be repressed and an introvert and afraid of life, which can come with a whole lot of mental baggage and baggage, or you're going to think that you're larger than life. You're going to have a grandiose delusion about life that you can do no wrong. It's either one of the two. You're either sheltered or ignored. That's what I see in kids. I don't see a whole lot of balanced parenting these days.
No, absolutely. And I want to get to a couple of really good comments right now from our crowd at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. God of Thunder is saying, Dave, society has changed so much over the years. The respect that once existed just isn't there anymore. That's very true. I mean, you look at even in the projects and in the poor areas, people are getting gunned down and dying because somebody wants their running shoes. I mean, it's ridiculous. The value of life has absolutely dropped in certain areas.
Yeah, I think that, you're right. You say the value of life, and I've never been one to blame video games or movies or anything like that for someone's behavior. But I will say that there does seem to be, and I'm not drawing a connection, I'm just drawing an analogy. There seems to be sort of a parallel between the idea that a lot of these kids have when they play these shoot-up games, like the military games where they, run through the game and shoot people up, and then they get shot and they die, and all they do is hit the reset button and they hop right back up and go at it again. You know what I mean? And then they sort of seem to have that same mentality in life, that everything's disposable. Even life is disposable. Relationships are disposable. Your education is disposable. Everything's disposable. It can all be replaced, and all you got to do is hit the reset button. And I think we've sort of fostered a culture like that. It's very insensitive, and there's not a lot of respect. I was saying a few weeks ago, I posted on one of my social media things that a lot of young women, I'll use the expression "yes, ma'am" or "yes, sir" or "no, no, sir," whatever, and young women sometimes will react to me and go, "Don't call me ma'am. I'm not old. Don't call me ma'am." And I'm like, well, I don't know if you've actually looked up the definition of ma'am, but it's actually a gesture of respect. And it's not an insult, and it has absolutely nothing to do with age. But, people aren't even receptive to gestures of respect. People don't even hold doors open for each other anymore.
I got in crap for that once.
Did you?
I did. By a lady in Vancouver a number of years ago when I worked in radio. I held the door open for her. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm holding the door open for you." "You don't have to do that. I could get the door myself." I said, "Ma'am, it's called being polite." "What did you call me?" "Oh yeah, it happens up here too." And I think the larger cities become, going from cities to metropolises, that insensitivity really grows, and it really desensitizes everybody to be nice. Like, I'll be honest with you, Jamie. When I moved to the small town up here up north, there were two things that weirded me out. And it took a while for me to get used to it. Number one, you'd walk on the sidewalk or drive down the road, strangers would wave at you.
Right.
Strangers would wave, "Hey, how you doing?" And the second thing that weirded me out was people saying, "Hi, how are you?"
Right.
I was totally not used to that, and yet I grew up like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Texas, and we, by and large, and I'm back in Texas now, and by and large, we've always done that. People here are generally more connected. You get around the urban areas, and maybe not so much, but by and large, you do feel the difference between, say, Las Vegas or Los Angeles versus Texas or somewhere else in the south of the United States. And, if you have a flat tire, somebody's going to pull over and ask you if you need help. If you run out of gas, they're going to ask you if you need help. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I remember I had this big 4-wheel drive truck that was such a pain in the butt when I took it to Los Angeles, and could never find a gas station. They're so hard to find there. So I ran out of gas, and I was on the side of the highway there, and I must have been there 2 hours. No civilization in sight. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do. Cell phone died. I couldn't get anybody. Car after car after car after car passed me by. Finally, this guy in a truck pulls over, asks me what's wrong, and he gives me a ride to the gas station, lets me use his gas can, drives me all the way back. Turns out he's from Texas. He just happened to be driving through California. But nobody stopped for hours, and it's just a big difference, But I think all this goes back to, just like I said, a big disconnect. And when you have people that feel like they're not connected in the world, they don't really have an equilibrium. They don't have a foundation. And I think we have a lot of what I would refer to as floaters in the world. They could be out there in the world with mental problems, emotional problems. They could be taking drugs, prescribed drugs that are affecting them in a negative way. And, if they don't have someone checking in with them or caring for them daily, hey, man, how you doing? How you doing, buddy? You want to have coffee? You want to get together? People just don't socialize unless they want something nowadays. They just don't. They're not very neighborly like that. And I think because of that, a lot of people slip through cracks, and that's how you find a lot of these characters that are on the fringes. You say, well, I never knew they would do that. And I don't know. If you spend a little more time with them, you might know that they would do that. Maybe.
Well, it is common politeness, too, on a lot of these things. It is common politeness, along the lines of, holding a door open, saying please and thank you, even saying hello to a fellow human being. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and I think that's what is needed is trying to teach kids today that it is okay to meet your neighbor. It is okay to ride your bike without a helmet and wipe out. It's right. Perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
right?
You got to get some life on you. That's how I put it. But yeah, the original question here was, what do we do about this? And that's what I've seen for the longest time. And there's a lot, in my opinion. One of the things that I study constantly is the social engineering that's going on. It comes in the form of the PC culture and all these different nuances that are bleeding into our society that on the surface look and sound like good ideas. They seem like goodwill measures, but they're taking a toll. I believe we're seeing the residual effects of a weakening of society with some of these, what I would call ultra liberal ideas, the social engineering that's going on. I think we're weakening the family unit. I think we're weakening thereby the community and the neighborhoods and everything else. And I think it's taking its toll. I think that parents are afraid to be parents. Neighbors are afraid to socialize. We're afraid, like you talked about holding the door open earlier, and the girl barked at you because you said yes, ma'am. Probably makes you second guess now, holding doors open for people. Probably makes you second guess saying yes, ma'am, right? You don't know how somebody's going to react,
Absolutely. But, it goes further than that. It's the humanity. And I think in the end, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in the United States, there is a loss of humanity towards your fellow person, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, okay? And
absolutely,
regardless of political correctness, which to me is probably one of the masterminds behind all of this crap, is the more politically correct we've become in society, the more things like this have started happening.
I agree, 100%. Yeah. Now that you talked about the lack of humanity, I started noticing that too. Back when you would call years ago. This started years ago. One of the first times I really put my finger on it when I was calling the phone company to sign up for a new cell phone service or something. And I started getting the runaround with these automated voices on the other end. Press 1 for this and press 2 for that. And I was having the hardest time going in this loop, getting nothing done. I couldn't get a live human being on the phone to help me. And it just became frustrating. And I thought, isn't all of this technology supposed to make life easier? Isn't it supposed to make the process easier? Not only do I find that it does quite the opposite in a lot of cases, but we have, in fact, with email and IMs and text and social media and all these different ways to communicate without actually communicating, we really have lost a lot of the humanity in the human experience. And I think that's unfortunate. I think in a lot of ways we just don't know how to really connect with each other. I think it's a lost art.
Jamie, we are losing you on Skype here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect from you, and I'm going to call you right back to see if we can get a cleaner signal in here, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Let's see if we can get Jamie back on with a clearer signal here, because that was sounding a little rough. So we definitely want to get a clearer message in here. So we're going to try this again. All right. Hopefully.
Hello.
There we go. Let's try this one out. You were sounding like you were on the back end of a rotary dial telephone in 1974, man.
I was going back to old school, trying to get away from technology. No.
Absolutely. Why not? So it's funny because I see the time delay in the chat room, and after all of this, everybody is like, Jamie is sounding muffled, or is it just me? Jarbled a tad.
I'm calling the future.
Yes, he's a time traveler. He's a time traveler. That's it. So getting back to it, here's one of the things that I have noticed in the last couple of weeks, even the last month. Where have all the stories nationally on the Las Vegas shooting gone? Where's all the reporters? Have they just moved on to the next one because if it bleeds, it leads?
Yeah, that's always been a phrase in that sort of journalism, hasn't it? But I think it's something else, too. I think in the Las Vegas situation, from everything that I've been able to gather, the FBI sort of moved in and took over that investigation almost from the get-go. And they, from all appearances, what I can tell is they pretty much formulated all the talking points for the sheriff. They formulated all the talking points for the media, and they pretty much hawked the investigation from the beginning. And I think they reached an impasse. I don't think there was any more story in the story that was being offered from official sources. And there's a whole lot of bizarre stuff. You and I talked about this right after it happened. And there's still a whole lot of bizarre things going on with that one that I think later are going to come back around. There's a whole lot of unanswered questions still with that story.
Through your sources whom you have talked to, is it still the idea that there was a hidden second shooter there, or are you still leaning towards what the law enforcement says, that Stephen Paddock acted alone?
Well, I personally never formed an opinion one way or the other concretely because I wasn't there. And I wanted to really take it because it hit so close to home and affected people on the ground there that I actually knew. I wanted to be real objective about this, and because Rebel Planet isn't officially launched yet, I didn't have to pursue the story from a journalistic standpoint. Obviously we are covering it for, post reasons, but my feeling from the beginning was I talked to my friends who were at the event. They were on the ground during the shooting, and I did have two friends actually shot there. So both of them survived, but and I also had friends that were working there. I had friends working security. I had friends working the bar. I had friends there that were just watching the show that ended up helping others to the hospital. And I'll tell you, man, every single person that I have talked to from the day it happened, from the night it happened on October 1st and until now has not changed their opinion that there were multiple shooters. And I trust their opinion more than anything else, because they were there on the ground. And, you know, I'm not convinced of anything, to be honest with you. I have a big problem with the official narrative on the Las Vegas shooting. A big problem. You know, some of the things that stick out, like one would be what I just mentioned, that actual witnesses and victims who are on the ground, you can't really get more firsthand than that. You know, you're actually shot, you know. They all contend that something stinks with that story, and they believe that there were multiple shooters. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I have a tough time with the logistics. A lot of the logistics, and you and I talked about this a little bit, but I have a big problem with a lot of the logistics of Stephen Paddock being a lone gunman under the circumstances of which the official investigation so far has outlined. I don't necessarily buy that. I think it would be a stretch to have a 64-year-old man pull off that. But some of the other red sore thumbs that are sticking out for me are that they still, to date, have not produced any video of Paddock bringing weapons up to the room at all. It seems to me that would be an easy enough thing to do. After all, they did release a video of him, apparently a very grainy video that you can't even really tell it's him, but they released a video of him when he supposedly injured himself a few years earlier in the casino and filed a lawsuit against the casino because of that injury. And they readily produced that video, but they can't produce at least one video of Paddock coming up to his room with a bag. And then supposedly we have a bellhop, a doorman in the casino that says, yes, I helped Paddock up to his room and he had no bags. You know, I don't know. It's a little odd. There's a whole lot of on this one. There's a whole lot of bullet points that have not been addressed, and that's a problem for me. I think that when the official investigators like the FBI and the Sheriff's Department say no more press conferences, that's it, and pretty much encourage the press to walk away, and you have very huge, outstanding questions in an event where over 500 people were shot and 58 died. I think that the public needs to know what happened. I don't think this story should be dead. I don't think the officials should be walking away from it. And if the questions can be answered, I think they need to be satisfied. I think the hotel and the police have a responsibility to answer these questions and satisfy the public on this.
What do you think? What do you think about the theory out there, Jamie, that many people are saying there was a gunman in one of the helicopters that's flying over? You've lived in Vegas a number of years. You know as well as I do, and I've been there a number of times. There's always helicopters flying in and out of McCarran for helicopter tours of the city, of the Grand Canyon, and so forth. Do you buy the gunman in the helicopter theory?
I wouldn't know. I guess it'd be possible. I don't know. I haven't seen any video footage of that. It's just one of those things floating around. You know, for as many questions as there are unanswered in that case, there's an equal amount, at least, or 10 times as many conspiracy theories. And which raises an interesting point that I wanted to make at some point here. So I'll go ahead and use this opportunity to do it. I think what happens in our society now, especially with, like we've talked about so many times, with the with as much alternative media as we have out there, which I love. I love alternative media. I'm in the business of alternative media. So are you. So I love alternative media, and I love people asking questions and always questioning the narrative, always digging, because we should. You know, as much as we should try to connect with each other, I think we should also be engaged in what happens in our world. We should be engaged politically. We should be engaged in things that happen in our world. And I don't like just trusting the mainstream news. We've done that for decades upon decades, and we know they've lied to us. So I feel really good about the idea of alternative media. However, that's a double-edged sword, because with things like social media and YouTube and alternative media websites and radio shows and all this and that, there's a whole lot of room for misinformation through those channels as well. And they're just as likely to give you false information as any other, you know. And any Yahoo nowadays sitting in his living room with a YouTube channel can invent a million conspiracy theories. He can just pull them out of thin air. Anything that's halfway plausible or feasible on paper, you know, they can just spit it out. And then thousands of people will watch that and believe it, and then spin their yarn, you know, spin it another way. And it gets out of control in that respect. So the helicopter thing, I don't know. Somebody show me some footage. I'd like, if somebody feels like somebody shot somebody out of a helicopter, I'd love to see the footage of that, you know, whatever.
You talk about,
I haven't seen any.
Jimmy, you talk about conspiracies, and I'm right with you on that. I think conspiracy theories are a good thing, and they can also be a very dangerous thing. And we're going to get into conspiracy theories during this show tonight, and we're going to talk about false flags. But I think there is no problem in asking questions, especially when things are just a little too coincidental. For instance, a few weeks after the shooting, not long, Stephen Paddock's brother gets busted in a child porn sting operation. You know,
another brother I heard about,
you know, in California. Now, for me, being in the alternative media, all of a sudden, you know, your mind starts trying to put two and two together, thinking, is there something he knew? And are they trying to bring him in on something, right? Or did he actually do that? Because the investigators did say they were investigating him way before his brother, Stephen Paddock, committed the atrocity in Las Vegas. However, considering that it happens, I mean, this is a family that really had no criminal history besides their father, who was a convicted felon, but the boys all seem to turn out very good with educations and a little bit of wealth, and a lot of them. But I mean, the whole point is, when it happens so close together, it does make you ask the question, is this just mere coincidence, or is there something actually tied to it? Tied to it being both events. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Sure. Well, you know, I have looked into that as much as I can, and gotten nowhere with it. We've hit a brick wall with that, so haven't been able to figure out anything out on that. But I thought it was curious too. I thought it was curious that we never heard about that other brother until he was busted. We heard all about the other brother and the father, but we didn't hear about that other brother. And then all of a sudden, he gets busted for child porn, and you know, I don't know. I did a little bit of investigation on another story a while back, and we didn't publish it because it was, you know, it lost its fizzle before we could get to it. But there was an idea put forth. It was brought to my attention that a lot of these, you know, porn is everywhere on the internet these days. I mean, sometimes you won't even be on a porn site and something porn will pop up, or you'll get an email from something porn that you never clicked on. You know, it's all over the place. Or maybe you do like porn, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's legal, but there's so many cookies and pop-ups and all of these things that that are out there that can get themselves onto your computer without your knowledge. And it was brought to my attention that in some cases, some of these websites that you will visit will actually download things that may be considered illegal or at least questionable onto your computer without your knowledge. You might not even know they're there. And I said, well, to what end? Why would they do that? I said, well, I don't know, but if somebody looked at your computer at a later date and were to discover things on your computer that you didn't even know existed, they could use that against you. And I thought, wow, that's a dangerous thing. That's interesting. So we followed it to its end as much as we could. And sure enough, there are a lot of these, especially porn sites. If you go to a porn site, and I won't mention any of the names of them, but some of the bigger ones, pop-ups constantly pop up. And I was like, wow, what are these windows? They're just popping up everywhere. You just struggle to close them all before you can even get on whatever it is that you tried to look up. And I thought, man, what is it? You don't know what's going on in the background of your computer. You got to be very careful these days. But theoretically, and I'm just throwing this out there, theoretically, who's to say that can't be a tactic at a later date? If you really wanted to frame somebody, say, oh, well, he's got child porn or this porn on his computer or whatever, you may or may not even know it's there. And then, don't get me wrong, I'd never excuse any child porn or anything like that. I wouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is that, there are ways to railroad a case and drum up a case against somebody if you have an ulterior reason for doing that. I went the long way around of tying that together for you, but you see where I'm going with that. It's like maybe he had something on his computer that he should be arrested for, or maybe he didn't. You know what I mean? I don't know. I found it very strange, to say the least, that we never heard of this other brother, and then in the middle of an investigation, all of a sudden he pops up and gets arrested for something he had on his computer. The timing was odd, which I think you were alluding to.
Absolutely, and a lot of people in the field of ufology believe that same thing happened to Stan Romanek, who was found with child porn on his computer after calling out the government numerous times about what they know in the field of ufology, and he was getting actually quite cocky about it. So there, let's face it, the easiest way for any government alphabet agency to knock someone off without actually killing them is through child pornography.
Oh, yeah. Because nobody has a tolerance for that.
Well,
so,
exactly. But even
it's not question it. They're going to immediately blacklist you, look down upon you, and put you in a little box and call you a deviant. And they're not going to have any mercy on you or anything that you have to say. If they say, "Oh, this guy was looking at child porn," it's like, lynch him now. Nobody has any tolerance for that. So it would be a brilliant tactic to go to if an agency wanted to frame somebody. I could see very easily how that could happen. Let's put it that way.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, though, is because the public hatred towards people who harm any child,
rightly so,
which is very rightly so. We're not denying that. But even if you're found innocent, and how many times have we seen, people have those accusations thrown, whether it's by an ex-wife or whether it's by a colleague or whatever, have those wrongful accusations overturned, but as long as it's in the public eye, that person has to wear the scarlet letter for the remainder of their life.
Yeah, that's a stigma that's hard to shake, and that's a tough one. I agree. And when we're talking about the electronic age, like you said, any alphabet agency wants to swarm down on somebody and retrieve their laptop or a PC or whatever, iMac, and then say, he had all this garbage on his computer. It's like, well, yeah, did he? Did he look it up, or did it just download itself, or is it, a link of a link to a link? I mean, what is it? Who knows? I don't know, because I know I have to check my computer probably about once a week with all the emails that I get from conspiracy theory websites and everything else, just to make sure that I don't have junk download, like, some new virus protection or program I don't want on my computer, and just tons of things. It's hard to keep up with all that crap. So I don't know. It seems to me like it's very ironic that this guy comes out of the woodwork, and we never even heard of this other brother until he got popped. So,
well, of course, they did all the interviews with the brother, I believe, in Florida. They didn't even talk to the brother in California, which the media could have easily tracked down.
Exactly, and it seems like they would have, right? But if you had something to hide, you know what I mean, you might be sitting on it. And I'm just theorizing, but what if he reached out and wanted to share something, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to hear from this guy, let's shut him down.
Could be, but now you got to wear a tinfoil hat, because now you're a conspiracy theorist for even thinking that, my friend.
Absolutely. Well, you're right, and I agree with that. But we're just entertaining questions, and again, I don't find anything wrong with entertaining questions, even to the extent of like the little scenario that you and I just laid out. I think that's fine. I think when you start releasing videos on YouTube and you start putting forth a theory and signing up to it, and saying this is what happened, that's where we run into problems.
Jamie, I'm going to get you to hold on. We are going to go to our first break of the night, a very fast hour with Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. The Rebel Planet happens the third Thursday of every month. So Jamie's next appearance will be Thursday, December 21st. He will make sure he has his Santa hat on and maybe a couple of cute elves on either side of him. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we get into the Zodiac Killer. True crime writer Soren Korsgaard is going to join us all the way from Denmark. It's going to be a fantastic show indeed. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe.fm, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Thaumatrope. Thaumatrope is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us on Facebook for live chat in the SOR Space Travelers group. We are also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, and our brand new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Spaced Out Radio, no longer Spaced Out Radio Show. We're moving all the archives over, so make sure you sign up for that quickly because we want you to be able to hear our archives. And you can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. If you haven't got yourself a t-shirt from Spaced Out Radio, what are you waiting for? Christmas is coming. We also have the Encounter online. Great news stories being updated on a daily basis. Check it on out. And great videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. The third Thursday of the month happens to be Rebel Planet Night. From Rebel Planet News, Jamie Sexton down in San Antonio, Texas. Jamie, welcome back. We are not here.
Good to be here, brother.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Jamie, one of the things that we're talking about tonight is the fact that conspiracy theories are going a little too far with absolutely everything these days. People are calling false flags. People are saying nobody was killed. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I actually went online to hear and read on Facebook a lot of these conspiracy theorists saying that there wasn't a single person killed in Las Vegas. And to me, I just shake my head. Because at some point, you have to be able to think. You have to be able to realize that not everything is a government conspiracy. How have conspiracy theories been blown out of proportion so dramatically as they are today?
Well, I just think that, if you can imagine something, it's probably going to manifest itself. So with all this sharing of information, and like I said earlier, any Yahoo sitting in his living room next to his computer in his bedroom with his computer can, publish something these days for the whole world to see. And when there's something that everybody's paying attention to, those things are going to drive to the front. We live in a very, I think part of the problem is the media's fault, the mainstream media, because if they had done a better job of being honest with the public and not acting so high and mighty with sharing information, and if the government were the same, I think people wouldn't necessarily be so driven to find out what the real truth is. But, the media does lie to us. We know that. They sell us short a lot of the times. And we know that the government holds things. Your government, our government, other governments, they hide things from us. So I think that it's a natural thing. It's a natural thing. I don't think that we're seeing anything that shouldn't be expected. I think that we just have to be responsible about how we view information and listen to information that's out there, and just know that that's going to happen. We live in that kind of world now.
So let's move from Las Vegas to near San Antonio, where you are, where there's even people calling that shooting at the local church as a false flag event.
Yes.
And, you know, before we get into details, because I want to let everybody know, you were actually at that church within a couple hours of the incident happening. And you got to talk to some incredible eyewitnesses to this. But let's talk about false flags for a second. Why then are so many people so quick to call false flags? Within minutes, people were calling Vegas a false flag event. Nobody died. Sandy Hook's a false flag event. Boston bombing is a false flag event. And this church shooting, a false flag event. Why are we jumping on the false flag bandwagon so quickly?
Well, you know, ironically, some of those I would question might actually be false flags. We don't have to hash all that out tonight, but because I do believe there are false flags. I think they do exist. I think that it is a tactic that's been used by our government on the international stage as well as the national stage. And it's not a new thing, and it's not new to the United States. It's not even new to the Western world. It's a psychological tactic. It's a warfare tactic. It's a social tactic. Misleading and putting out false information and propaganda and all sorts of different, you know, tactics like that go back to the dawn of mankind and civilization. So it's not beyond the scope of reality that this stuff happens. We know that it does happen. And therefore, in that sense, that's one of the reasons that I do encourage people to explore alternative theories, question things. But I think what happens is when there's a difference between questioning things that don't seem right and you need to get to an answer there, a satisfactory answer, versus just inventing things out of thin air. I think people invent things out of thin air and publish it as fact. And, you know, you'll see that a lot these days with some of these videos that come out of, you know, on YouTube, like with these cryptic voices, like, you know, Anonymous and all these things. They come out with this robotic voice. And you know, they lay things out as if they're fact. And everybody's like, oh, man, this is true. Did you see that? What do you think of that? You know, I get it daily because of what I do. I'm sure you get it daily. I mean, my mailbox is full every day with people that are convinced of everything you could possibly imagine with any event. And I, you know, it's just runs the gamut of conspiracy theories. And it's amazing to me because with a lot of this stuff, you know, there's absolutely no substance to back it up whatsoever. I don't mind questioning anything, especially things where I think there are questions. And I do believe that there are false flags. And I believe that because of that, whenever something doesn't fit in the official narrative, we should question it. But drawing our own conclusions just because we think we're smart or we think we figured something out is not necessarily responsible, either as the person that's putting the information out or as the person that's reading the information. I think we need to be really responsible not only in how we, you know, present information, but also in how we read it. Because people do want to know the truth. We're driven to want to know the truth, and I think that's a good thing. But we need to be not so gullible, and because here's the danger: not only do we stand to be misinformed, but worse, I think what happens is that if, let's say, you have an incident, right, and it is a conspiracy. Let's just say that there's a conspiracy and something is manufactured and the public is told one thing, but yet the truth is another thing, right? Now here's where all of this social media and conspiratorial world and all that can actually help the conspirators. This can actually help the people that are doing bad things, because what happens is that if there's 1,000 conspiracy theories floating around out there, right, around one event, there's only one real truth there, right? Now, if that real truth is different than what the official narrative is, in other words, what the media and what the authorities are telling us, we would like to know that real truth. But if there's 1,000 conspiracies out there that are going in every direction, oh, maybe it was this, group, or maybe it was that person, or maybe it was this, and maybe it was that, what happens is all the waters get diluted. The whole story gets diluted. And then you could sit there and tell somebody the truth. The conspirators could come out and tell the truth, and it just get dismissed as another conspiracy theory. So that's another reason I think we need to be responsible about exploring these things, because we can water. If our mission is to actually discover the truth, I think we can water down that pursuit, by throwing too many conspiracies at one event. I think we need to slow down and focus on the questions that are not answered and demand that our authorities and the media tell us the truth. We want to know the truth. What about this? What about this missing piece of the puzzle? And until they present something that's satisfactory that can be proved to answer that question, like in Las Vegas, show us the video. There's one. There's an example. Show us the video. Because we know in Las Vegas, and I know that there are cameras everywhere. If this guy was hauling up weapons to that room, there should be some video of that. And we haven't seen any. So
yeah, but a private corporation owns that video. Why would they release it to the public?
Well, if the private corporation wants to be a responsible entity and continue to have people trust their building as a safe place to go, it seems to me like it'd be a responsible thing to do. You'd say, listen, here's the bad guy. We already know who the bad guy is. The media told you who the bad guy was. The FBI told you who the bad guy was. The sheriff told you who the bad guy is. So here's some video of the bad guy bringing the guns we told you about up to the room. What's the problem with that? There should be no problem with that. By hiding the video, you're actually making yourself, the hotel, the business, is making themselves look like they're involved. They're making themselves look as an unsafe place to potentially be. So it seems to me that it would be good business to show the bad guy bringing up the weapons that you claim they brought up. You know what I mean? It's that simple. So one would argue, well, there's a lawsuit and this and that. Well, if the story's real, then the story's real. There's nothing to hide. You know what I mean? You're not going to get out.
Devil's advocate, though. Yeah. Devil's advocate, though, they may say, Jamie, that, well, for business purposes, we just want this story to be over and done with, and we don't want our current patrons or customers to feel any more stress or potential stress about coming here when Vegas is supposed to be about dreams and adult aspirations.
Well, do you feel good about that explanation?
As a journalist, I want the answer. I want the tape.
Well, what if you were, as a journalist, yes, okay. But what if you were one of the 500 people shot, or the community affected, or the families affected? Are you still satisfied with that answer? I think they owe the public to show us the video. I think the sheriff's department owes us to show us the video. I think that everybody involved, the FBI, they need to show us the video. If they do that, Dave, if more of these people would do that, they would look better. They would look more responsible to the public. By treating the public like idiots and morons and, oh, you don't need to know, and let's just sweep this shooting where 500 people were shot. Let's just sweep this under the rug so we can go on, propagating our business. That's not a responsible thing to do. That's dirty. That's ugly. And as long as you do that, conspiracy theories are going to continue to run rampant because you say you have the truth. You say you have the proof. Let's see the video. Let's see it.
I get that, but what if the lawyers...
They're not showing the video because they don't have the video to prove that the guy brought the guns up. That's my theory right now. If you had the video, I think you'd show it. You don't. So...
Yes, I understand that, but what if they're lawyers? Because MGM carries a very big stick in the state of Nevada. What if their lawyers are telling them to, keep that just between the police and everyone else because we're going to have a lot of civil suits that we're going to have to cover?
Right, but again, the truth is the truth. So if the police, let's not talk, okay, let's consider the police angle. First of all, if they do have video, here's the way that breaks down. Until the casino hands over that video, right? It is their property, right? They own it. They don't have to release it unless there's a subpoena for it, unless it's court ordered. Now, you would think that in a case like this, it would be immediately court ordered. Now, once they turn over that, it's state's evidence. It's now public evidence. It's evidence in court. Now it's up to the discretion of the police whether they release it or not. It's no longer property of the casino. It's evidence at that point. It's not a tangible piece of evidence. It's video. So at that point, the police can show it to the public. They don't have to sit on that. They don't have to. But I'm not going to get into details, but I've been involved in situations where I personally needed a friend of mine, and I needed video footage from a parking lot in a Las Vegas hotel, and there was no way we were going to get that. We wouldn't have got that. They didn't want any part of it. They were not. Oh, yeah, that camera wasn't on. We never saw it. So you're right. They probably are playing that game. But I think the police and the FBI have a responsibility to retrieve that video and make it public. And again, if they would just do that, because the truth is the truth. If Paddock really was a lone shooter and he hauled, I don't know, what was the final count? 23, 27 guns up to his room? I forget.
21.
21 guns up to his room. Okay. If this guy really did that, there should be plenty of video from several angles of those bags. Even if Paddock didn't personally do it, there should be video of somebody bringing in those bags up to his floor and exiting that elevator to his hallway. There should be plenty of video evidence to that end. And if someone else other than him did that, well, that means somebody else was involved, and we would want to know that too. But if somebody else wasn't involved, and it wasn't a hotel employee bringing up those guns or those bags of guns, then it would have been him. In any case whatsoever, there is no reason to hide the truth from the public. All they're doing is stirring up conspiracy theories. And I would say that really can't be good for business. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I really don't even see how it would help their civil suit. I mean, maybe there's an angle I'm not considering, but I just don't see it. Just show the public. Show us the video. But I bet we'll never see that video.
But the same thing could be said on 9/11 for the 757 that hit the Pentagon. Why not show the video?
What video?
Exactly.
I mean, no. Who had video of that?
Well, there was around 80 cameras around the Pentagon that would have shown an airplane hitting that.
Oh, Pentagon. Okay.
The Pentagon, yeah.
Yes, you're right. if there was an airplane that hit the Pentagon, you should be able to show the video, right? I mean, we pay for that Pentagon. That's tax dollars pay for that. That's our Pentagon. That doesn't belong to anybody but the people. So we want to see it. Show us the plane. Did a plane hit the Pentagon? Let's see it. I think we can see it. I think after all these years, we can stomach seeing the plane approaching the building. Maybe you don't want to show it crashing, but let's see it approach. Let's just show us the plane. Show us the plane. So, yeah, that's a good analogy because the same thing. I think in these cases, you know, if people want to say, oh, conspiracy theorists, this and they want to ridicule conspiracy theorists. Well, you know, first of all, like I said earlier, I think we all have a responsibility to responsibly question everything. I encourage that all the time. We're not going to get away from that. In today's society with technology and the way people communicate, we're not going to get away from people questioning. So I think the authorities need to find a new way of answering questions that the public want, or else they have no room to criticize conspiracy theories. Because if you're not answering these questions, people are going to be compelled to try to answer them themselves. And that's where we're at with it. I think that they have a responsibility to answer questions.
So let's get back to false flags here for a second, Jamie, because there are a lot of people who are continually bringing up that every event that is catastrophic that shows up now, whether it's in the United States or around the world, is an automatic false flag event.
Right, it's a knee-jerk reaction. Nowadays, anything that happens along those lines, you're going to have conspiracy theories. It seems to be the form of what happens, and so it's expected. It's expected immediately. And you talked about this Texas shooting that we had here. I was there. I was there less than 3 hours after the event. I was there. I was no more than 50 yards from that church and interviewed several of the people on the ground who lost loved ones. I had talked to the primary witness of the entire shooting. In fact, his home was shot, and the bullet entered his house and missed his 2-year-old son by 2 feet. And he ran inside and grabbed his wife and kid and put them in the bathtub. But he saw the entire shooting start, and he saw his neighbor run out and shoot at the guy. So, you know, I was on the ground with these people. It was a real event. It really happened. Real people died. And from all indications, it's pretty much exactly what the news is telling you. Now, I don't know the actual background, per se, of this kid who lived in New Braunfels and did the shooting. I don't know. Some of that still, undiscovered information. But he appeared to be a local. He was a veteran. He had some mental issues, blah, 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 blah. So we know a little bit about him. But it appears to be like the media is reporting it and like the officials said. I was on the ground and I did talk to these people, and they were real people. And as a matter of fact, the witness I just told you about, I spoke with him today. He and his family are on the way to Colorado right now to visit family because they're still shaking up from this. But I've been keeping in touch with him. I've been keeping in touch with a few people from that story. They're real people. And that church is 24 miles from me. So, these are local people. This is a real event. And, doing what I do, not only did I want to go down there and cover the story, but I also wanted to make sure that the story was real, That's what I do. And I did find it ironic that the FBI was on scene immediately and they appeared to take over the investigation. And I questioned it. I questioned a few FBI agents and I questioned the sheriff deputy, particularly with that question, why is the FBI here, blah, 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 blah. And what I've discovered about that, is that the FBI, after 9/11, part of the Patriot Act changed things. Used to, the FBI would not get involved in local or domestic cases unless the crime occurred over state lines, or unless weapons that were used were carried over state lines, or there was some other qualification for the federal agencies to get involved. Otherwise, it was just going to be a local event. No matter how many people died, it would be a local event. But after 9/11, that's no longer the case. After 9/11, because of the Patriot Act, anytime there's a mass shooting or anything that even reeks of that it could possibly even be terrorism, and even in theory, the FBI steps in and they're supposed to assist the local authorities unless it's deemed that they need to take over the case. I will say that I do have a little bit of a problem personally, that it appears to me in a lot of these cases like the FBI oversteps their bounds. At least that's what the optics look like to me in a lot of these cases. And it even looked like that in Sutherland Springs, in the Texas shooting here. In fact, around the church itself, the entire church, by the time I got there, was surrounded by tents, FBI tents, and FBI trucks. You couldn't even see anything but the steeple of this little church. You couldn't even see the actual church. You could just see the steeple sticking up behind FBI trucks. And they had the FBI had it completely cordoned off and had taken control of that church. But, they do supposedly have more resources. And I can see in a little town like Sutherland Springs, population 400, definitely the FBI is going to be able to come in and have more resources than their little police department or even surrounding police departments to investigate this thing properly. So, I can see the argument. And like I said, given the fact that after 9/11, this is new protocol, it is what it is. I'm not real comfortable with it necessarily as a given. I like things handled on the local level if they can be. But I just think that the very idea that the FBI can just come over into any jurisdiction and just take over a case so easily, especially without explaining to the public why they're doing that. My feeling on that and my fear of that is that it just leaves a whole lot of room for manipulation. You know what I mean? Because local authorities have a responsibility, especially sheriff's departments, because sheriffs are elected. They're elected officials. So they have to answer to their public. And that rapport between the law enforcement agencies and the public is very important. And you trust them. You want to trust your local law enforcement. But these feds come in, and you don't necessarily know who they are. They're federal government, and they don't really have a good reputation of really interacting with the public very well or telling us all the details. So for me, I get a little itchy when the FBI just sort of just shows up and takes over a case so rapidly. But that seems to be the new protocol after 9/11.
It's the same thing here in British Columbia, where we have a group called IHIT, and they're called the Integrated Homicide Team. And, same thing here. For every murder in the province or death in the province, IHIT comes in to do the investigation, much like the FBI. However, they work more in coalition with the police forces rather than fully taking over an investigation. So when the FBI comes in to do this, do you find that it's maybe bullying the departments to hide information or to fizzle down some sort of maybe hot conspiracy that could be going on with a case?
In my opinion, I think that any time that you push out the local law enforcement and break that connection between the local constituents with their sheriff's department or their local police chief and the FBI's there, I think it unnerves a lot of people, especially in our country. You know, the sheriff's department and the marshal department in our country have always historically had a really good relationship with the constituents of your county and your area. And, you know, the federal government, not so much, you know, because they hide things. And they feel like there seems to be just sort of this unspoken rule with the feds that they don't really owe the public an explanation. Everything can be hidden and swept under the rug and classified and yada, yada, yada. So to me, it's a little bit unnerving. I'm not suggesting that that's exactly what's happening, especially in every case, but the potential is there. And I will say that if you look at the Las Vegas footage of the sheriff in Las Vegas, he became increasingly nervous with every press conference that he did. He looked very uneasy every time. And not only did he look uneasy, but he had that FBI agent hawking over him the whole time, just looking at him. The FBI agent didn't even look at the public, didn't even face the media in the crowd. He just looked right at the sheriff, just looked at him, hawking him, just staring him down, which I found extremely creepy. And I don't know, I just don't have a good feeling about those sort of tactics. Maybe it's protocol, maybe it's the way they do business. I don't like it. I think that the public and politicians, the authorities and politicians and the media, I think they have a bigger responsibility than they've historically shown to the public. I think they need to explain things in more detail and be more forthcoming with information. They always hide under the idea that, oh, you know, this is an ongoing investigation. Well, share what you got. Let's hear what you got. Keep investigating. We're not asking you to hang up your spurs right now. Keep doing your job. But, you know, you can report to the public. You can let us know where we're at on the important stuff. You know, let us know. And the more you do that, the more the public will be satisfied, you know, with things. If they don't believe you, maybe they're following their instincts. But if you're telling us the truth, I think you'll satisfy a lot of minds. When you tell us nothing and you hide behind the umbrella of, oh, well, it's an official investigation. At some later date, we'll tell you. And then what happens? We never hear. We never hear. We'll never get the video footage from Vegas. We'll never know what happened there. We'll never see the Pentagon footage. We'll never know what happened there. You know what I mean? So people are going to continue to invent conspiracy theories. It's just nature of the beast.
We're getting a lot of questions, Jamie, about confirmed false flag events. The one that comes to my mind right off the bat is the Vietnam War was started on a false flag event. That's over 50,000 American soldiers dead due to a bunch of lies. Absolutely.
That is absolutely true. And when people say, oh, come on, why would they, there's always this quotation, they, the big they. Why would they do that? Well, first of all, who's they? The government? You think the government is always honest with you? Never. Never. They don't even come close most of the time. But we do know historically, and there's a big example. The entire Vietnam War was started, as you say, off of a lie, misinformation. And now here's the ironic part about that. Decades later now, we all know that to be true, don't we? We all know that to be true. But yet, when it comes out decades later, it's like, yeah, big conspiracy. Nobody pays for it. No heads roll. Nobody goes to court. Nobody goes to jail. And the public just accepts it as, oh, wow, you know, this historic event, we were all lied to. And then they go on about their business. You know, they may have a jaw-dropping 30 seconds while they contemplate that their government lied to them, but then they're on about their business. Americans and people in Western culture, we seem to have very short attention spans. So it's ironic that, like 9/11, nobody wanted to believe that 9/11 was an inside job when it first happened. We all wanted to wave the flag and become patriotic and, go to war with anybody in the Middle East, and it was America strong, blah 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 blah. I even felt that way. I had a friend at the time who told me, he said, I think this was an inside job, and I did all but disown him as a friend. We had it out, and I said, don't say that, blah blah blah. An event like that affects you emotionally. It affects you in a real visceral way, and you don't want to believe that your government would lie to you or possibly kill thousands of people but here we are, years and years later, and now most polls show that millions and millions of Americans do not believe the official narrative of 9/11. As time goes on, it becomes easier to absorb that idea. But at the time, you don't want to believe that. You see what I'm saying? So time has its advantages for not sharing information. You know what I mean? These government agencies can hide information, and then years and years later, they'll release some unclassified document or some previously classified document, and there seems to be almost no reaction to it. Like, looks like they lied to us. But the point is, as you pointed out, they do lie to us. They've gotten us into wars over lies. I mean, where are the weapons of mass destruction? Where are those? So many lies.
Well, but here's the question, though. Why in America, or is there a law then, because I honestly don't know, on why people who've been victimized by this, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Vietnam, is there no law for reparations against your government for a false flag event or something along those lines? Because if I lost my child in war, and I found out that we went to war illegally on a lie up here in Canada, there is, if you look with the First Nations here, the First Nations up here over the sex abuse scandals and everything along those lines are getting reparations.
Right.
Millions upon millions of dollars.
Well, fundamentally, I agree with your principal argument. I don't know how that cookie crumbles. That's for somebody else to sort out. But yeah, I follow your argument. I think that if the United States or any other government in this world falsely propagates war and engages in war based on lies or deception, especially their own manufactured deception, and people die and losses are incurred, yeah, I would say that theoretically in those cases there should be some liability. Like, again, I don't know how that cookie crumbles in Vietnam. I don't know how it crumbles legally. I don't know how all that works. But I do agree with you. These are questions that should probably be addressed. We should never go to war over lies. People should never die over lies. We should never be paying government agencies and politicians and institutions to lie to us, to lie to our international neighbors. We shouldn't have that. That should not be happening. But yet it always has happened. Not just in the United States, not just in the West, but throughout the history of mankind. Like I said earlier, propaganda, false information, all that is just part of the human condition, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, let me get to another question here from Andrew in Twitterverse here on Spaced Out Radio, and he is saying, what about the Saudi connection associated with the Las Vegas shooting? There's reports out there saying there was a counter coup going on involving the Saudi royal family. Did you read into that at all?
I did. As far as I understand, there is no connection. That one seems to be a completely manufactured conspiracy theory that seems to have no basis. The prince they're referring to that was arrested does not have any connection to the MGM properties, as far as I've been able to find out. There's a conspiracy theory floating around that he owned part of the Mandalay Bay and yada yada yada. And no, there's no records to indicate that prince had anything whatsoever to do with the Mandalay Bay or MGM properties, for that matter. None. So I found no connection in our investigation on that. There are some Saudis who do have stock in MGM properties, but not that family, not that prince. No connection there.
Gail is wondering if you could define what a false flag is.
Well, a false flag is basically when you use an event as a cover for something else. When you use that event to drum up a reaction, whether it be war or something else, based on a false event. In other words, there's something about the event that is not true. Maybe it's the details, maybe it's the entire event, maybe it never happened, maybe they report people died and they didn't die. You know, it's deception is basically what it is. It's misinformation.
So when it comes to the United States government being in false flag events, much like Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction, and we had to go finish Daddy's job, which totally brought civil unrest with one hanging in the Middle East. I think we can all agree on that. You know, do you think that at any point in time that people are right in catching on to these subjects and saying there is more to it and we got to read between the lines more? Or are, I know Americans are very proud and very patriotic flag wavers, or is that patriotism still through and through, which is guiding everybody's thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's just symptomatic of American patriotism. I think that's something that's happened throughout. I mean, it happened to Germany in World War II during the Nazi invasion. People got swept up in that sort of thing. And I'm not comparing the United States to that. What I'm saying is that anytime you have a sense of patriotism or allegiance to your country, you could do so without doing so responsibly. And I think there needs to be a balance. I'm proud of the United States. I'm proud to live here. I'm happy living here. I think the United States is a wonderful country. However, we're not infallible. And I feel a sense of responsibility, personally, to question my own government and the responsibility of my own government. My flag waving doesn't make me blind. And I don't think, no matter where you're from, I think that should be the policy. Always question what you show your allegiance to.
Mm-hmm. So, since you were in Texas where this shooting happened, take us through the events from the information you've been able to gather about the shooting.
From my understanding, what happened was this 26-year-old individual from a nearby town came to Sutherland Springs, Texas, that day by himself to the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs. Sutherland Springs is a town of about population 400, very small, close-knit little community. If you blinked when you drove through it, you probably miss it. But he drove there apparently his motivation was that his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife attended that church sometime. She wasn't there that day, and so did his ex-mother-in-law, and she wasn't there either. But apparently he didn't get along with the mother-in-law, and so the thought is, at least preliminary, that he drove there as a vengeance against them. So he pulls up to the gas station, which is across the street, he parked there but left the vehicle running, opened his driver's door, and walked across the street to the church. And as he started to enter, there was a ramp in front of the church. There was a ramp that came directly out of the double doors of the church. And then I think approximately 25 feet down that ramp, there's another ramp that went the other way, that teed it. It made a T, and that ramp went down either side. So he entered the one side of the ramp and started up the ramp and started shooting. And when he did that, a neighbor across the street was changing his oil on his car, and he heard it, and he popped up and saw the guy just in time. He saw the guy emptying the first clip, the first magazine, which would be a 30-round magazine. He dropped that magazine and put in another magazine, and then noticed the neighbor that I'm talking about looking at him. So he turned his rifle towards the neighbor, shot at him 2 or 3 times, like I said, with the bullet going through his house. He ran inside and got his wife and child and put them in the bathtub. Then he went ahead and went around the church, and he was firing through the church. He was firing through the walls from the outside inside. Then he walks back around to the front, up the ramp, and inside the church, and started shooting people inside the church at point blank range, women, children, men, everybody. And meanwhile, a neighbor adjacent to that property woke up from a nap, and his daughter told him there was a shooter outside. So he grabbed his rifle, ran outside barefoot, ended up hiding behind the vehicle of the neighbor I told you about who was changing the oil in his car, hiding behind the hood of that vehicle and training his own rifle on the shooter, or on the doors of the church. So when the shooter came out of the church, he addressed him, he yelled at him, and when he did, he shot at him, and then he fired back. And the gunman, the shooter, got into his car that was still running and took off down. Well, before he started going down the road, he fired 2 shots out of the window with a pistol at the neighbor with the gun. Then he went on down the road, and the neighbor who came out with the rifle and was firing at the gunman saw another passerby in a truck and hopped in the truck with him with his rifle and said, "Follow that car. That guy just shot up the church." So they went about 7 or 8 miles down the road, 5 or 6 minutes it took them, and they were going 95 miles an hour in and out of traffic. And apparently the gunman called his father while he was being chased by these 2 neighbors, and told them what he had just done, and told them that he had been shot and he wasn't going to make it, and that he was going to take his own life. And then supposedly he shot himself in the head, and his car went off the road and ran into a bale of hay, one of those big giant round bales of hay. And the 2 neighbors that were following him stopped about 25 yards away and waited for the police to show up until they did, and there was no more movement from the car. So that was the end of the scenario, except for the fact that supposedly he had some more weapons, more ammunition, and some explosives in the trunk of the car. So he might not have been done with what he was going to do. So
you had a chance to actually interview the neighbor who was shot at while changing the oil of his vehicle. What was the emotion like there? We got about 2.5 minutes before we got to go to break.
He was incredibly shaken. I mean, he was still in shock. He was somewhere. He'd been doing interviews all day with all the major networks, and he probably wouldn't have done an interview with me because I think he was just interviewed out at that point. And, I didn't really expect to get an interview with him, but one of the guys from Telemundo was there who I know, and he introduced me to him, and he goes, yeah, man, he goes, I'll talk to you. You got tattoos. You look pretty cool, man. Because this guy had tattoos all over him. He was a local blacksmith. He makes knives for a living, and he thought I was cool. So he took the time to come over and talk to me, and I could tell the poor guy was still really rattled. What he had seen that day, what he described to me that he saw was horrible. He went into pretty good detail about what he had seen, and he introduced me to a couple of the other principal players in the story, and I interviewed them as well. But at some point, I just had to stop talking to him, man, because he was just so shaken up. I said, why don't you go be with your family? And he said, I'd like to, but I can't get over there because there's way too many reporters and blah, blah, blah. So we rounded up a sheriff's deputy, and he escorted him over to his wife so nobody would bother him. And I just felt bad. And a couple of days after that, I reached out to him and checked on him, see how he was doing. And I've done that since, here and there. I talked to him today, as a matter of fact. And like I said, a couple of the other key players, and I talked to some sheriff's deputies while I was there, and I talked to a couple of the FBI agents when I was there. So
it's definitely traumatic. When we get back from the break, Jamie, I want to find out what the feeling was like being on scene for a shooting like that or a crime like that, because I know when I was a reporter, if I was around something that was borderline criminal, yes, I worked in sports, but when there was something traumatic that happened, there was a definite feel to it. And I want to get your feeling on that, of what it was like, being that close to the Summerlin Church being shot up on that day. So, Jamie, you hold on. We are going to go to break. The third Thursday of every month, we bring in Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News, as he is the owner of the alternative future of media. Rebel Planet, still in construction, but still creating news as it happens. Jamie joins us, like I said, the third Thursday of every month. His next appearance will be on Thursday, December 21st. It's always a good time. We'll be back with more Jamie Sexton right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we finish up the week talking about the Zodiac Killer. We're going to get into the science behind this with true crime author, that is, Soren Korsgaard. He's all the way from Denmark, going to be joining us, and he's a fan of the show. I hope he's listening on in tonight. And if you are, well, it's 9 hours different, so it'd be early morning for you. Good morning, Soren, if you're listening on in. Look forward to our conversation tomorrow. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, TheFringe.fm, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. It is Thaumatrope. Thaumatrope is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to connect with us live during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can join us for live chat on Facebook in the SOR Space Travelers group. We're on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. You can check out our brand new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. No longer Spaced Out Radio Show. We'd love it if you subscribe to that. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at the Spaced Out Radio store, great videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV, and our news section is starting to light up with the Encounter online. Check it all out today. For the final time tonight, we introduce Jamie Sexton to you. He is our guest the third Thursday of every month with a segment we call The Rebel Planet. From Rebel Planet News, Jamie Sexton, welcome back.
Good to be back.
For a lot of these shootings, there seems to be mental derangement. And if we go into some conspiracy theory here, Jamie, there's a lot of people out there who are surmising that maybe a lot of this conspiracy is because of mind control programs that a lot of people claim they have been put through MK Ultra and other hidden government programs like that. Do you think there is anything involved like that with these mass shootings? Because the anger somebody has to show and the disregard of life that somebody has to show to walk into the church in Summerlin or walk into, a hotel and shoot 58 people dead and over 400 or 500 wounded. I mean, it's just strange that normal everyday people are taking their anger to a whole new level.
Well, I don't think they are normal everyday people. I think that they are deranged, to whatever degree they are and whatever got them there. I support the theory that tactic does exist. That sort of warfare does exist. That sort of mind control does exist. We've seen it used in programs before. I'm not necessarily sure that it's played out in shootings necessarily. I wouldn't discount it entirely because I don't know. But I don't necessarily, I'm not sold on the idea either, because I think that, you run a big risk doing it that way. You run a huge risk doing it that way because, if you say, well, I'm going to program someone to do this. Well, that would take probably an institution, right? It would take some sort of group to program this person to be a killer to do this thing. Well, they're not killing for no reason. They would have to have an objective themselves, right? So the plausible idea, if you follow it through, to program to do it would be plausible deniability. In other words, we're going to make some crazy person do it instead of hiring assassins to do it anonymously, right? But to what end? Is this person going to be killed, or is this person going to be arrested? Like, we know that James Holmes, for example, in the Aurora shootings was captured. You know, he didn't kill himself and he wasn't killed, so he's captured. So we run the risk at some point of him spilling the beans, you know what I mean? Snapping out of his programming and saying, well, I've been spending time with this group or that group. It just seems to me, in other words, that it's kind of the long way around of doing something. I'm not necessarily sold on the idea that domestic situations like this. Now, I would say that in the case of an assassination, a single victim assassination, it might be a little more plausible to try to program somebody to do that. You know, like an Oswald, perhaps, or Sirhan, perhaps. I don't know. You know, but you still run the risk of them snapping out of their programming. You know, it just seems like a very risky way to go about it if you were trying to do that. You know, first you would have to have a motivation, an end game. Why are you doing this in the first place? Why are you programming this person to do this thing? And then what's going to happen after it's done? Are they going to kill themselves? Did you program them to kill themselves? Did you program them to get caught and hold this secret? I mean, you know, there's just a lot of questions with that. So I'm not necessarily sold that it's used for that, but I'm not saying that it's not. It's just that's generally the way I pursue these things. I try to follow them through and play devil's advocate and reason it out. If I were the bad guy, why would I do that? You know, just to me, this doesn't make rock solid sense that these people would be programmed to that end.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is if we look at, you know, the whole idea behind a Manchurian candidate type person. Right. You know, now somebody like Stephen Paddock really wouldn't fit that description at 64 years old and out of shape. Yet this former military person who shot up the church in Texas, well, that might be, considering he is ex-military. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different ideas behind whether or not people have been programmed to think, okay, I'm depressed, I'm angry, I might as well go out with a bang, because now it's the popular thing to do. Let's see how big we could get the death count before I either got to blow my own brains out or before the police get me.
Okay, so let's entertain that for a moment. Let's follow that through. So let's entertain the idea for a moment that the Texas Sutherland Springs shooter was programmed to do what he did. You first have to say, well, who would have programmed him? And to what end? What government agency would want to shoot up a small group of parishioners in a small Baptist church in a very small town? What do they gain by that? What exactly is the end game there? I'm not discounting it. I'm entertaining it. So how would we follow that through?
I have no idea. But I mean, let's face it.
Right.
Bad seeds happen.
If you're entertaining, see, this is part of what I was saying about people being responsible with entertaining conspiracy theories, is that you can't just leave a hanging idea like that. If you're going to say, you know, if you're going to throw that out there, fine. That's a valid question. It's an interesting theory to entertain, but your theory doesn't hold water even as a theory unless you have tied up all the ends. Like, what is the theory? Where does it start? Where does it end? Who would have programmed the guy, and what for? What does anybody get out of it? You see what I'm saying? you have to kind of follow these things through. Otherwise, you have this hanging theory out there, this idea, this kind of vague what if, and it doesn't really serve a purpose. I mean, it's an interesting theory, and I wouldn't discount it on its face, but at the same time, if you can't tie up those loose ends, at least in theory, this is how I go about entertaining even my own questions and my own theories about things. Questions that I have, say, what if this, what if that? I have to say, okay, well, if somebody, you just got to be responsible about following those things through. The only logical thing that I could conclude, and again, this is hypothetical because I think that the Sutherland Springs shooting was 100% legit. I have no reason so far to believe it's not. I think it was just a guy that was out of his mind and decided to exercise a vendetta against his mother-in-law, his ex-mother-in-law. So I think that's where it's at. I think he's a deranged individual. However, if I were going to entertain the idea, well, okay, maybe he was a program guy and he did this small town. What would be the end game? It wouldn't. I mean, these people in this small town are not consequential to the big picture of anything. There would have to be some sort of public effect you're looking for. And the only public effect I could think of would be to scare more people into signing on to gun control. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm saying that would be the only logical reason for any institution or group or government programming a guy to go into a very small Texas church and shoot up a bunch of people, because these people don't have money. They don't have political secrets. They don't have, you know what I mean? It's a very small community. So if you're looking for something, it would be public effect. And in this case, I just don't see that. Again, I wouldn't discount it in all cases, but using that same reasoning, it still would be a very sloppy tactic to use by any agency that didn't want to get caught. Because if you're programming somebody to do something, you run the risk that at some point they're going to start to recall those recessed memories of being programmed. Not that they will, but you run the risk of that. And that's just sloppy. That doesn't seem plausible to me.
BTO in the chat room in Spreaker has a very good comment here, and I'm going to turn it into a question. Do you find it convenient that in the church the ex-wife and ex-mother-in-law were not present when this happened?
No. I don't find it to be a relative factor. Again, I was there, so I talked to the locals, and they do attend that church regularly. So, if the guy was hell-bent on showing up there to do destruction, and, I don't think he's going to walk in with a machine gun. Remember, he was already firing before he ever entered the church. So if he enters the church and they're not there, I don't think he's already committed to his crime. You know what I mean? I don't think it makes a difference that they weren't there that particular day. I don't think it's relevant to the story. In fact, they attend multiple churches. That family does. So it's not necessarily unusual that they're not there. In fact, there is another Baptist church about 4 blocks down the road from there that he may have been headed to after, and they also attend that church sometime. So I don't necessarily in this case think that that's a relative point. Good question, but not in this case. Yeah.
Take us back to the scene, okay? What was it like seeing the church and being on the streets of that town so soon after this horrific incident? Because for a lot of us, we've never been in that state of trauma with the energy and the feel of everything that is going on. So take us through the emotional side of this for you.
Well, it's a little odd. I don't know. I've been through a lot of stuff in my life. I've seen a lot of crazy things. So I generally tend to think that I may be a little more mentally conditioned to see things that other people may not necessarily be conditioned to. I don't know. I'm not necessarily that raw with my feelings. However, it is interesting that, I haven't been back in Texas that long. And these little towns like Sutherland Springs, they're everywhere. Texas is a very, very big state. And we have a lot of little spot-in-the-road towns like that. And generally when you pull over in those towns to get gasoline or, refreshments or whatever, everybody there is really sweet and really nice and down home. And, they'll talk your ear off. And there's just that, real small-town feeling. And they're not used to a lot of activity around them. So when I pulled up there, it was already dark. And when I got there that evening, there must have been, I'm going to guess, 300 or 400 police, sheriffs, ambulance type vehicles all around, fire trucks, all sorts of emergency response vehicles, lights all lit up, hundreds of news trucks and satellite trucks and reporters and cameras and lights and curious people, everywhere. I mean, it looked, if you didn't know any better, you'd think the carnival rolled into town. There's just hundreds and hundreds of people in this tiny little town where there's only generally 400 people, and it would have been lights out by that time. But you could spot the locals. You knew who the locals were because they were traumatized. And they were huddled in little groups around, behind the fire station, on people's back porches, front porches. You couldn't get near the church because, like I said earlier, the FBI had it completely sealed off. You couldn't even see the church other than the steeple. And they had it lit up like a Christmas tree, the entire church. I mean, so many halogen lights, it looked like a moon base. But there were 16-foot high, 20-foot high blow-up tents that they erected extremely quickly and surrounded the entire church and took over that crime scene. So the closest we could actually get to the church was probably about, I'd say, 40, 50 yards away where they had it, cordoned off. One of the eerie parts about the church is while I was standing there waiting to talk to one of the sheriff's deputies, I saw a laser point up and hit a tree. And as the sheriff's deputy came over, and I saw another laser and a couple of more, and I asked him, "What's that?" And he said, "They're setting the trajectory lasers inside the church right now to see which direction the bullets entered or exited the church." So those were lasers coming from inside the church, shining through bullet holes in the wall, up through trees on the outside. So that was pretty eerie to see all these lasers, one after the other, just keep stacking up and shining through that church. That was strange. And then we saw one of the pastors of the church was standing there. I guess he had done a few interviews, and he looked like he'd just, like the life was drained out of him. You saw families huddled together crying, and there were still people, believe it or not, covered in blood. They still had blood on them, on all their clothes from being in the church that day. So it was very traumatic. It was very real and very surreal at the same time. It was an odd feeling, and I got to tell you, I saw so many reporters around there that was so callous. I know they were doing their job, and I respect that, but it's almost like they were just completely out of touch with the human element of it. And I couldn't really adopt that for the sake of information. Everybody I talked to, I just felt entirely heartbroken for. It's a very, very traumatic situation.
As someone who has been in those scrums and someone who has taken part, I remember one of the first assignments that I had as a reporter, I had to take our station vehicle and leave it outside of a house and sit in that vehicle because there was a body in the house. It wasn't confirmed whether or not it was a murder or suicide, and as a reporter, I had to sit there. and wait and wait and wait. It made me as uncomfortable as anything. I had family members coming up to me and saying, look, can you get out of here? We don't really need you here right now. It turned out to be a suicide. Shortly after, about an hour in, the officer came up and said, look, you can go. There's no story here. It's a suicide. And it's, common knowledge in reporting, you don't report suicides unless it's a murder-suicide or the death of someone famous. That's just the way it is. It's kind of this unwritten code in journalism. So I can understand where these reporters are in there, trying to get as much information as they can, and it being callous. It's not pretty. It's not something that the majority of them actually enjoy doing. They actually hate it. But in order to get the clip or the quote that you need for your story, you have to be a little bit of an idiot, even though you don't want to be. I would use a much ruder word, but considering we're on terrestrial radio, I can't do that.
Right.
So it's just one of those situations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I tell you though, I will say this, because my demeanor was a little bit different than some of those other mainstream media reporters that were on the ground there that night. I got a more candid response from people than they would. People opened up to me quite a bit because they felt like they could feel, that I had some compassion for their situation, and I wasn't interested in just beating them over the head with things. And like I said, I've even kept in touch with them since. So I think, humanity is an important part of the job. I think if you can have some respect for people in situations, they'd be more willing to share things with you. I even had one of the witnesses say, well, I didn't tell CNN this, and I didn't tell, he was willing to share stuff with me that he hadn't shared with them. Just because he trusted me and I was being sincere with him. But I couldn't be anything other than that because I did generally feel bad for these people. I kept thinking about, here's a circus going on around them right now with all these lights and tents and sirens and reporters and everything else. And in a few days, all these people are going to be gone, and you're going to be left with a destroyed town. This is a very small town, and all those people got killed in it. And they're going to have to deal with that. And the reality of all that's going to set in, and you got to start planning funerals and all sorts of things. So it's, yeah.
No, I fully understand that. Fully understand that indeed. And it's one of those things where you have to be careful with, whatever you are doing in regards to the way you want to report. And it's not something that a lot of reporters are proud of, and some, frankly, just don't care. That's just the way it is. And it is sad, but, that is the hardcore reality with beat reporting. It's not pretty. Yeah. I want to get to Joe's question here, because I think this is an important question as well. And he is asking, and let me just find it here. Hasn't it been shown that a large majority of the mass shooters were on some sort of antidepressant drugs or some other type of medication?
Yeah, that does seem to be a common thread with a lot of these mass shootings. It sure does. There seems to be, of course, unfortunately, a great deal of our population is on some sort of prescribed drugs these days, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's a whole other matter. But yeah, it does seem to be a common thread with most of these cases. That seems to be true. It was reported by the authorities in the Vegas shooting, in the Texas shooting here, in the California shooting. Yeah, a lot of them. That seems to be a common thread.
No, it's very strange indeed. And you have to wonder, does this now bring in something to the effect of, what's happening with the creation of these medications that are supposed to help for depression or anxiety or other mental problems.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a whole lot of chemistry going on that we're supposed to trust, and I don't necessarily trust it all myself. You know, it's there seems to be a whole lot of, you know, suicides. Most of these suicides that we talked about before on previous shows, like with Chris Cornell and Chester, that they were both taking medications like that. Just, I don't know. I don't really feel good about a lot of these medications, you know. And I haven't taken them in my lifetime, but I've known a lot of people that have. And a lot of these doctors are very careless with switching medications, and then people don't take them even as they're prescribed, and just a whole lot of abuse, both on the medical side and the community, as well as the patients themselves. So. Seems like a risky business with a lot of those medications, in my opinion.
I want to change topics here, JB. We're going to stick on the conspiracy front here, but I want to tell you and my listeners, if you hadn't read my Facebook earlier this week, in regards to something strange that happened here. And it's nothing paranormal. But you and I have talked about this a little bit, and you even responded on Facebook to my post about this. So the other day, I was craving a bag of potato chips. So I was working on the shows and working on the computer. This is about Monday. Okay, I go upstairs. I don't show or I don't say anything that I'm going upstairs to get potato chips. I'm thinking in my head, I'm craving potato chips. So I go into the cupboard, grab a bag of Miss Vicky's potato chips, bring them on down, put them on my side table that my cameras on my computers cannot even see. And the next thing I know, I open up my Facebook, and there's advertisements for Miss Vicky's potato chips. Now, unless the microphone can tell what kind of chips I'm eating by the sound of the crunching in my mouth, I find this very, very odd and eerie, and a lot of people are having this happen. In fact, I got tagged in it today by someone who had that exact same thing happen to them earlier this morning. What is going on with the fact with social media, especially Facebook, where it seems like all you have to do at times is think of a product, and the next thing you know, it's spamming your advertisement with it on social media.
Yeah, you know, that you told me about this. You and I discussed this a few days ago when this happened. I think I asked you, did you have your camera on? You said no, right?
Right. Did not.
But had you had your camera on, would the potato chips, would the bag have been visible in the camera had you had it on?
Okay, to be blunt, the bag's cover was upside down, so I had the directions side. And why they need directions to open up a paper chip bag, I have no idea. But you know where they put all the writing and the content of the chips on the back? The back right. was right side up. And no, on the table where they were, the camera would not have been able to see them.
Okay. And you don't remember typing to anybody, I'm going to get potato chips or anything like that?
Nothing.
I think that would be coincidental, to be honest with you. I don't see, even from a technology point of view, how that would
Me
even
either.
work. But you do bring up a good point, and more people are experiencing these creepy things where, you know, an exact item that they were talking about. They didn't search for it online. They just had a conversation about it. Pops up in advertisements immediately after or shortly after. And I read about this technology a number of years ago, and I was sitting around with a buddy of mine who plays guitar in a very famous band. Whenever he was off tour, he and I would always stay up way late at night watching TVs and entertaining conspiracy theories and having parties and all sorts of different things. And we got on this subject, and I said, yeah, man, I go, this is a real thing. I said, it's true. I've read this is what they're doing. And I said, well, why don't we just conduct a little experiment? So we got out our cell phones. We didn't type anything into them. We just sat them on the table, and we started having a conversation about fishing, deep sea fishing, whatever. And within an hour, all of the ads on his Facebook and on my Facebook were all fishing gear, fishing vests, lures, fishing poles, fishing trips, all sorts of things. So this device was actually, because when you sign up for Facebook and those different things, if you read the fine print, it says in there, do you allow this application to access your microphone, your camera, your data, yada, yada, yada. And, agree to these terms, then you can join. And everybody clicks yes and sign me up. And they don't give it any thought. And it's not a person. It's not some crazy person sitting somewhere in a tech building in Silicon Valley spying on you. That's not the way it works. It's a computer that is using using your device and those aspects of your device, your microphone, any key entries, any keywords, your camera, things like that. It's using those instruments, the computer is, and certain algorithms that are built in there to search your preferences and to search the things, the audio that you're putting into it and the things you're saying. And you do give them permission, in technical legal terms, you do give them permission to pick up ambient sound off of your device. And not only that, but you give them that permission to do so even when you are not logged into their application. So, because it doesn't specify when you are logged in. It says, do you allow this application to access these parts of your device? And we all say yeah, and so that's what it does. So that technology does exist, and it's paid for by advertisers. I would say your chip incident doesn't sound like there was really a way for it to pick it up, unless it's mind reading. And as far as I know, your phone can't read your mind, but it can pick up your voice. They can access your camera. And they can access barcodes and all sorts of things, and they will, because they want to sell you stuff.
Could they pick up bank's chips? Like on bank cards, you have the computer chip in them.
Could they pick them up? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I mean, because even when I go to Home Depot or Lowe's and try to use that chip card, if it's not in the machine all the way, it doesn't work. So seems like it's got to be in there just right. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's weird how it happens. And yes, we all sign on for that invasion of privacy. And I would say 99% of the people never read the fine print on anything. They just say, where do I sign? And or click the yes button and let's get things rolling. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all click happy these days. I mean, what are we going to do? Challenge it? You're not going to contact Facebook and go, well, now, incidentally though, there are switches that you can turn on and off in your privacy settings on the application. Most applications do offer that option. If you go in there, they say, they'll give you the option to turn that off, access to your microphone, access to your camera. Of course, as soon as you turn it off, then you need it, because you start trying to video chat with somebody and like, I can't hear you. Oh, I switched off my microphone. So they go back and turn it back on. You know what I mean? So hardly anybody ever turns those things off because they need them for chatting and video chatting, et cetera, et cetera.
With all that tracking that is going on, we don't hear many stories of people actually being videotaped and recorded through their own cameras. Is that potentially the next real conspiracy that's going to be happening here?
You mean by some business, like?
Absolutely. Oh, let's say the FBI or the CIA or the local police use video that they got by intercepting your phone camera or your camera phone. Right?
Well, okay. Theoretically, they can already do that. The technology exists to do that. I won't tell you exactly how I know that, but I can tell you that you can access. There is software that almost anyone can hop online and pay enough money for right now that if you could access somebody's device, you could take pictures from their phone, from yours. You can turn on their microphone. You can take pictures not only from one of the cameras, but both cameras simultaneously, front and back camera at the same time, from somebody else's phone in a different country if you wanted to. You can listen to ambient noise in the room. You can hear their conversations. You can see their text messages. In other words, it's almost as if you're holding their device in your hand, and you can do anything you want without their knowledge. They will never even know that this is downloaded on their phone. I can tell you categorically that exists. I've experienced it myself. It does exist. I've seen this technology at work. As far as recording, though, from a legal aspect, it requires several warrants, supposedly, to be able to do that. Supposedly, now, a lot of that may be gray area after 9/11 and the Patriot Act as far as the United States goes. I don't know how it would break down other places, but old school legal terms, you would not be able to do that without getting a chain of warrants to be able to do that. And not only that, but like let's say, for example, the FBI wanted to spy on someone because they suspected them of doing something illegal, and they wanted to access their camera and audio, et cetera, et cetera. First, they would have to get a warrant from a judge to be able to spy on that person, all right? Then they would have to get permission from the network whose phone, who the criminal's phone was on, right? So if the criminal's phone belonged to, let's say, for example, Sprint, right? The government would then have to take their warrant over to Sprint and get permission from Sprint to do this. It's not automatic that they can just access the device. They would have to get permission because they would have to go through their network. If Sprint said, no, we don't want to give you permission to do that, you'll need a warrant to do that. That takes another warrant to be able to do it. So there's a whole chain of legalities, supposedly, for them to be able to do that. And if they went around it and just wanted to know and didn't want that stuff to be admissible in court, yet just wanted to know what was really going on, they can already do it. You know, if you want to do it without a warrant, you can already do it. But to be used in a legal court of law, there's supposed to be a chain of paperwork to make that, legal.
Scary to think that no matter what you're doing, Big Brother or big social media is watching you. And it's hard to understand that.
It really is, yeah. It's very strange.
There's not much freedom around that, is there?
No, there's not. There's not much personal freedom about it. I don't like it. They do it all in the name of commercialism. Well, we want to be able to sell you things and make the experience of shopping and looking for things easier for you. So if you let us just spy on you, we can figure out what's good for you. We know that Dave likes Miss Vicky's chips, so we're just going to keep, we'll just remind Dave every few days that Miss Vicky makes great chips. So we're just going to shoot him some advertising. So he doesn't have to think about it. We're going to think for him, and we're going to make these decisions for him.
Yes, Miss Vicky chips are going to make me fatter than I already am. Wonderful. Wonderful. As long as the hair keeps growing, that's all that matters right now.
Now, see, maybe you could sue Facebook for subliminally making you fat.
Yes, maybe. Maybe. You got me thinking there.
There you go.
So what protection, Jamie, as you've studied this, is on the consumer then. Is there any privacy protection?
Well, like I say, there's always these little presumed loopholes where you can shut off your camera, you can shut off your microphone. I think from a legal perspective, they have to offer that opt-out kind of thing. Or you could just choose not to use these applications. That's their way out of it. That's your little opt-out. But if you choose to, if you choose to drive a car, you choose to obey the road signs. That's the way it works. If you choose to use Facebook's application, you choose to play by their rules. That's just the way it works, I don't know that. Beyond that, I don't know what protection we would have. I mean, Facebook is a business and a service, and so you kind of got to play by their rules.
I have to laugh here at Robert White's comment down in Australia. He says, "Then why don't they get A&W root beer down under?"
But they don't have A&W root beer in Australia?
I guess they do not.
I was not. They do have a great cream soda there. I don't know if it's A&W, but
I don't know. But A&W root beer is pretty darn good. Thanks for subliminally putting that in my head. So tomorrow now I got to go get a A&W root beer. Here they still serve it in the frosted mugs, eh?
Stop it! Stop.
Yeah, frosted mugs. Yes, for them big A&W bug.
A&W root beer with vanilla ice cream in a big frosty mug.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Oh, man.
That is very good stuff. So you haven't tried anything, though, until you tried a Tim Hortons ice cap, though. And I'm really surprised with all the Canadians that travel down to Las Vegas that there aren't like 30 of those Tim Hortons on the main strip there on Las Vegas Boulevard. They'd be sold out. I'm really blown away. That's a contract I want.
There you go.
Right there. That's a contract I want, is downtown Las Vegas for Tim Hortons.
There's your franchise right there.
Yes, I don't have the $1 million that it costs.
There's always that.
Yeah. That's always an issue. Who wants to go into business with Davey and put some Tim Hortons down in Nevada? Jamie's our PR guy, so he's in on the deal too. We'll be millionaires in no time. Hanging with all the famous people.
There you go.
Actually, you already got that in, so that's okay for you. But for somebody like me, face for radio, voice for print, a little bit tougher. Jamie, we only got about 14 minutes left here with you. Actually, less than that, about 11 minutes left with you tonight. And it's another show that has absolutely, flown on by. There's so much happening in the news these days that, when it comes to real news or alternative news, it's really, really getting offensive. In the regard, whether it's political or whether what's happening in Hollywood. I want to talk to you a little bit about what is happening in Hollywood with all of these pedophiles getting busted right now. When you lived in Hollywood, in L.A., working in the music industry and hanging out with everybody out there, did you guys know it was going on?
Well, no, not necessarily. You're talking about the pedophilia part of it and the
sexual abuse part.
No. I mean, there's no surface evidence, on the street with that sort of thing. Just like any other untoward thing, it's generally going to be done on the down low or behind closed doors. But you always hear stories about who's a creep and this, that, and the other thing. But unless you experience it yourself, it's just rumor. You don't really know. And but there is a sort of a vibe, I guess, in Hollywood that's just creepy all on its own, because people there, they sort of live in a bubble, and everybody sort of props everybody else up. because you all want to succeed, and you want this other person to lift you up, and it's just sort of this really fragile bubble that exists out there. It's not real. It doesn't feel real. There's no real genuine feeling in Hollywood. Everybody truly is acting, even in the music business. Everybody's always got a fake smile plastered on, and everything's great, and life is wonderful, and nobody's doing anything wrong, and it's just a real creepy, unreal feeling. You even get that in Las Vegas quite a bit. It's just, one of the reasons that I left there. It's just, it got to the point where you just couldn't tell who was really your friend anymore, if they just wanted something out of you, or to get somewhere, or to rub elbows with this person or that person, and just not something that tastes good, It's a very, and I think when you have environments like that, that's a facade, when there's this facade, that it leaves a lot of room behind the curtain for untoward things to go on. So there was always this vibe that you weren't really seeing what was going on, but you kind of felt like there was some dirty crap going on behind the curtain.
Oh, come on. That time I saw you at Guns N' Roses, all shoulder to shoulder with Nicolas Cage in his bright pink suit, three-piece suit.
Yeah, well, Nick's a friend. I like... He's a strange cat, but he's a good guy. I hope no stories come out about Cage. I love Cage. Besides, if something happened to Cage, I wouldn't have anything to watch on Netflix. They're all Nicolas Cage movies. You got Steven Seagal, Nicolas Cage, and I think that's it, right? On Netflix.
All we get at my house is the Gilmore Girls, and what's that other one? That Archie Comics one that's been turned into a real life TV series. Whatever the hell that one is, I forget what that one is.
Shameless? Is that what it is?
No, it's filmed in Vancouver.
Isn't everything filmed in Vancouver now?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I feel sorry for you, Dave. I'm sorry. Gilmore Girls, that's what you're reduced to?
I don't watch TV, man. I don't watch TV. Riverdale is what it's called.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so... I walked upstairs and watched on the television before the show. There was that vampire one, that popular vampire thing. That shows you how much television I watch, or movies I watch.
Popular vampire thing. What was that?
Oh, what was it? It was filmed in Oregon.
Twilight? Was it
Twilight? That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave doesn't go there either.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate what's going on there. Obviously, none of us have any sympathy for people that would violate, someone, especially children. But at the same time, it's weird, this phenomenon of dogpiling that I see. It's like, I'm starting to hear stories now of, in 1970 something, this guy grazed past me and made a comment about my dress. It's like, aren't we pushing this a little too far? Like, at this point, I mean, you're scarred? You're scarred because somebody gave you a compliment. I don't know. I'm having a little bit of trouble with some of these stories. On the other hand, if there was real abuse, bring it out. Put some daylight on it. Let the public weigh it out. But I do see some dogpiling. It's quite a show in itself right now. I'm kind of curious where this cookie's going to crumble.
Well, and that's why I ask, because, Corey Haim is going very hard on it right now. Or is it Corey Feldman? Corey Feldman's going very hard on it right now, and probably so he should, because if you believe his reports, he basically said he did report this to police in Santa Barbara, who did nothing with these reports when he was, quite younger. And now, at least somebody's giving him some respect. But, I mean, one of the tweets he put out was, please pray for my safety. Is Hollywood that callous and ugly that they would, kill a movie star? Or even a former movie star over something like that? Like, is Randy Quaid's comments about the Hollywood star killers really true?
I don't know. I've heard stories like that before, and I will tell you this: I actually know Corey Feldman a little bit. Not real close, but I do know him, and we have a very close mutual friend. And these are not new stories. This is just new that it's coming out with, as big as it is right now. But Corey's been telling these stories, candidly to close friends for a long time. And he has even publicly spoken about it in the past before. So for Corey's part of it, this isn't really a new thing. And I don't have any reason to doubt him or his stories. And I do believe that I've seen efforts on the part of Hollywood to kind of brand him as a nut job and blacklist him from getting work. And so in Corey's case, I can kind of back him up a little bit. He has been talking about this stuff for a long time. And, and like you said earlier, I was around that stuff for a lot of years, and I'd hear stories here and there, Nobody would ever name names or, give specifics, but, there were comments here and there about, and there's some other big names that I expect to hear, actually, that I haven't heard yet. No bombs dropped on them yet, but, names that consistently did come up, and then they haven't been fingered yet. So we'll see. Maybe some light will be shed on them if there's any truth to those allegations.
How do you think this is going to affect Hollywood in the long run?
I don't think it's going to affect them at all. People, it's like. People, like I said earlier, people have very short attention spans, and they like to be entertained, and they give people passes, and the media sweeps things under the rug. That seems to be, unfortunately, the way our society sort of functions. I don't think anybody's going to take any box office hits. I don't think any of the big name stars are necessarily going to lose work. Unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. Maybe a few will fall if there's actual cases and things can be proven, maybe. But by and large, all this stuff that's being tossed about right now, it's almost entertainment in itself, unfortunately. And I in the long run, the next big skirmish in the Middle East or the next big story is going to sweep all this under the rug, and we're not going to, it's probably just going to go away, unfortunately.
Well, would it take one of those Hollywood power stars to come out to make this happen, Jamie? Like, would it have to be like a Brad Pitt or an Angelina Jolie or someone with clout in Hollywood?
Angelina already did come out. She was one of the supposed victims of Harvey Weinstein. So yeah, I think Weinstein's the big story right now. I don't think it's going to get any bigger than that. But it might. Who knows? Like I say, I don't know what went on in every little dark corner in that town forever and ever. So who knows? My guess is right now it's probably going to play out. Like I said, like within a month or two, it's going to be old news.
I hear you.
Unfortunately, I don't think Corey's going to get his movie made. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
My friend, we got about 35 seconds left with you. Give us an update on when you're planning on launching Rebel Planet.
We're doing a whole lot. We're adding a whole lot of aspects here before we launch. As you know, I want to make sure that podcast is going to be strong and some other things. So probably first few months of 2018 is what we're looking at right now.
Looking good, buddy. Looking good. Jamie Sexton, thanks for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. You hold on while I wrap this thing up. In the background, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking away on Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. He rocks us in and brings us home every single night. We want to say thank you to Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. The Rebel Planet happens on the third Thursday of every month. Jamie's next appearance will be Thursday, December 21st. Tomorrow night on the program, Soren Korsgaard is going to join us. He's a Danish author who looks at the scientific side of the Zodiac Killer. He's going to join us for 3 hours on Zodiac Talk, one of the strangest American killer cases ever unsolved. That starts at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. I want to say thank you to my great team who's helping me put this show together on a nightly basis. Make sure you visit our website, spacedoutradio.com, read The Encounter online, go over to Patreon, donate $1. Help us get bigger and better. But most of all, I want to say thank you to all of you on our websites, sharing our posts, checking out what we're doing, those of you at home, in your vehicles, wherever you're listening, as well as on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. In the chat rooms, Revolution Radio, Facebook, and Spreaker. You guys make it awesome every single night and a lot of fun because together, my friends, we own the night. We will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one. I'm out. Good night.